I swear I didn't do anything wrong. All I did was throw up in class, and by evening, half the town already had a story. She's been sneaking around with boys, one woman whispered to my mother. She's possessed, said another. But I didn't even know what they meant. How can a girl like me, 10 years old, still playing with torn plastic dolls, be accused of something I didn't even understand? At first, I thought it was malaria. Mommy gave me the bitter yellow pills, but I didn't get better. My legs kept shaking. My stomach grew tight. I couldn't eat without vomiting. Then my belly started to rise. And suddenly, I wasn't a little girl anymore. I was a problem. They didn't ask questions. They just pointed fingers. Even Uncle Paul, yes, that Uncle Paul, the youth pastor, the man who prayed like God was his best friend, stood up in church and said I was lying. Lying. He said I was troubled, that I was trying to destroy him. People clapped. Clapped, bestie. Mommy tried to defend me, but no one listened, not even our neighbors. They shut their doors. One woman spat near my feet and said, "Shame." By the end of that week, we were thrown out of our house. Nowhere to go, no food, just me, my mother, and the smell of kerosene on her wrapper as we slept under a wooden store. And through all of it, I kept asking myself the same question. How can they hate me for something I didn't choose? But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the truth had a name, and it lived inside the child growing in my stomach. Mommy had this tight way of holding my hand that morning, like she was afraid I'd disappear. We walked to the clinic in silence. I remember how she didn't greet anyone on the road, not even Mama BC, the pepper seller she always laughs with. She just kept walking fast, pulling me along. I didn't know why we're going. I was throwing up, yes, and tired all the time, but I wasn't sick like other times. This felt different, like my body was angry with me for something I didn't do. When we entered the clinic, the air smelled like Dettol and hot sadness. The nurse at the front, Sister Nankechi, didn't even look up for first, but when she finally saw Mommy's face, her tone changed. She took us to a small room with peeling blue paint and a fan that made more noise than wind. She let us run a quick test, she said. She gave me a small plastic cup and pointed to the toilet. I didn't ask questions. I just did it, handed it over, and sat down beside Mommy on the metal bench. She was shaking her leg, the way she does when she's trying not to cry. We waited and waited. When Sister Nanketi came back, she had a paper in her hand, but she wasn't holding it like test results. She was holding it like a weapon. Her eyes met Mommy's, then mine. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. I think there's been a mistake. Mommy stood up immediately. Mistake? What mistake? She handed her the paper. Mommy read it, and then her knees just gave out. She hit the floor with a soft thud, like a balloon losing air. I rushed to her. Mommy? Mommy? Her mouth was open, but no sound came out. Her eyes were wide, frozen, and staring at the test paper like he had slapped her. I looked at the paper too. I couldn't read most of it, but I saw one word: pregnant. I didn't understand. What does that even mean? Was it a sickness? Was there something inside? I touched my belly. Sarah! Sister Nankechi called out, panic in her voice. Sarah was the matron, the one with the big voice and soft eyes. She walked in fast, took one look at the situation, and knelt beside my mother. Gift, breathe, breathe. You need to calm down. For the girl, look at her. She's scared. But Mommy wasn't breathing properly. She was shaking all over, whispering, no, no, God, please, no. I didn't know what to do. I just kept sitting there, my hand on her arm, my brain slowly trying to catch up to what was happening. Pregnant, but I hadn't done anything. Nobody told me anything. Nobody touched me. Except... No. I couldn't think about that. Sarah looked at me, and I'll never forget the way she blinked slowly before saying, you two should go home. Come back in a few days. We'll figure it out. Outside, the sun felt hotter than usual. Mommy didn't say a word the entire walk home. I kept looking up at her, waiting for her to speak, to yell, to cry again, anything. But she didn't. Then came the whispers. That evening, someone knocked on our door. It was Mama Peace from across the street. She didn't come in. She just stood at the edge of our compound and asked, "Is it true?" Mommy didn't answer. By morning, 3 more women had come. One just looked at me, hissed and walked away. Another one called Mommy useless and said we should be ashamed. By the second day, children at the corner shop stopped playing with me. Even the little ones who used to chase lizards with me refused to make eye contact. I didn't know what I had done. I didn't even understand what I was. But it didn't matter because they had already decided and no one was going to ask me the truth. I remember the night Mommy confronted him. She waited until the compound was quiet, when the women selling fried akara had packed up and the generator humming next door had stopped. She wore her wrapper tight and walked like she was ready for war, even though her eyes were trembling. She told me to wait inside, but I didn't. I stood by the wooden window, holding my breath, listening through the cracks. Uncle Paul's voice came first. "Are you mad, Gift? Me, your own blood. How can you stand there and say such a thing?" Mommy's voice was low, broken, but sharp. "The clinic confirmed it, Paul. Amara is pregnant. She's 10. 10. There was silence. I thought maybe he was crying too. Maybe he was ashamed. Maybe he would say sorry. But when he spoke again, his voice wasn't soft. It was angry, loud, cruel. "This is a setup. You are trying to destroy me. You and that demon child of yours." Demon. That word pierced something inside me. I didn't cry. I just stood there, still. The next day, he went to the church. But instead, he climbed the altar and told the whole congregation that we were the liars. He said we were jealous of his calling, that Mommy had been bitter since her husband died and now she was using her daughter to destroy his ministry. He didn't even call me by name. He said, "That child." They believed him. The elders prayed over him right there. They laid hands on his head. One woman even shouted, "The devil shall not win." And I stood at the back, holding Mommy's hand, wondering if I was the devil they meant. By the time we got home, 3 women had uninvited Mommy from their washing groups. Our landlord refused to take rent, not because he was kind, but because he wanted us gone. The neighbors stopped looking me in the eye. When they passed by, they mumbled things they didn't say to my face but loud enough for me to hear. "She's not normal." I heard she seduced someone. At her age, she's spoiled already. What do you expect? One woman at the market spat on the ground when she saw me and whispered, "Some children come from the pit of hell." Mommy kept trying to fight it. She went to the church office, to the elders, to the women's leader. No one listened. And then, Pastor James stood on the altar one Sunday and said the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. "There are spirits walking around in the bodies of children. Some of them were sent to destroy God's servants. When you see such a child, cast it out." Everyone knew who he was talking about. Everyone looked at me. And that was the moment something inside me broke. Not loudly, not all at once, just quietly, like a paper tearing in the middle. I stopped going to school. I stopped drawing flowers. I stopped answering when people called my name. Because even when they didn't say it, I could see it in their eyes. They all thought I was evil. They didn't sit us down. There was no prayer, just quiet stares, cold stares, like we'd brought something dirty into the sanctuary.
The usher pulled Mommy aside after service. I was just standing by the wall waiting for her when I saw her face drop. She didn't cry there. She waited till we got home. They said it's best if we stop coming, she said, folding her wrapper over and over like she could wrap up the shame too. I just nodded. What was I supposed to say? That I still wanted to go sing in the choir? The same man who now said I was possessed. 2 days later, the landlord came. He didn't knock, he banged. "This thing you people brought here," he said, pointing at me like I was a dead rat. "I can't allow it in my house. My wife is already having nightmares." Mommy begged, cried, even tried kneeling. He just shook his head and said, "Out before the week ends." That evening, we packed everything into black nylon bags, 3 to be exact. The 4th one tore halfway down the street. My clothes spilled into the dirt. I didn't even bother picking all of them. What was the point?
We didn't know where to go. No one would take us in. So we ended up by that old mango tree near the welding shop. It wasn't quiet. Cars passed all night. But at least it wasn't someone's compound where they'd spit when I walked past. That first night, Mommy held me tight. Like holding me would stop the word from crushing us. I couldn't sleep. The ground was hard. My back ached and my stomach, it was just starting to show. A small bump, but I hated it already. I hated what it meant, what people saw when they looked at me. I didn't feel like a girl anymore. I felt like a warning. The next morning, Mommy left to beg. She told me not to move, just sit under the tree and wait. When she came back, she had half a loaf of bread and sachet water. She didn't eat, just gave it to me and said, "Eat slowly, we'll find a way." We didn't. Not for days. We moved between the tree and the kiosk that smelled like rust. I started avoiding mirrors. I avoided my own reflection in puddles. One day, a woman selling fufu walked past us. She looked at me and clicked her tongue. "Small girl like this? Better cover her face before she curses somebody else." Mommy used her scarf and tied it around my head. She didn't say a word.
That was when I stopped looking people in the eye. I kept my head down, always, like my shame had weight. I started pretending I wasn't there, that I wasn't growing a life inside me, that people weren't scared to touch me like I was fire. But the worst part, it wasn't the hunger. It wasn't even the insults. It was how fast the silence grew between me and Mommy. She loved me. I know she did. But even she didn't know what to say anymore. Not to me. Not to herself. She just sat beside me at night and whispered prayers that got quieter and quieter. And I just stopped replying. We were sitting near the market gate when she first saw me. I didn't even notice her at first. I was too busy pretending not to exist, holding out an empty bowl, hoping someone would throw in coins or leftover puff-puff. My scarf had slipped halfway off, but I didn't bother fixing it. What was the point? People already looked at me like I was cursed. She was wearing white, a nurse uniform, neat, clean, everything I wasn't. She didn't drop money. She crouched and just stared at me. Not like the others, not with disgust, with something else, like worry. "Where's your mother?" she asked. I pointed toward the line of wooden stores. Mommy was trying to convince a pepper seller to give her a spoonful, even if it was the spoilt ones. The woman, Sarah, that was her name, waited. When Mommy came back and saw her talking to me, her face went stiff. She thought someone was about to insult us again. But Sarah didn't insult. She offered food. She said she worked at the clinic down the street and had seen me around a few times, always sitting, always quiet. She said she didn't like what she was seeing, that no girl should be this thin and this silent. We followed her to a small flat near the hospital. It smelled like Dettol and groundnut stew. I sat at the edge of the chair like I didn't belong there, like my shame would stain her cushions. She served rice, hot rice. I nearly cried. She didn't ask too many questions, just looked at me, then at Mommy, then at my stomach. "How long have you been out?" she asked quietly. Mommy hesitated, then whispered, "Almost 5 months." Sarah blinked, like she was swallowing something heavy. "Any family?" she asked. Mommy shook her head. "None who would help." Then Mommy broke, just like that. Her voice cracked as she tried to explain about the pastor, the church, the lies, how nobody believed us. "How could they?" she said, almost laughing through tears. "He was Pastor Paul, we're nobodies, single mother, teenage girl, easy targets." Sarah was quiet, too quiet. She kept rubbing her hands together like something was burning inside her. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I believe you." Just like that, no hesitation. But then her eyes dropped. "The truth is, that won't be enough. Not for the courts, not for anyone. You need proof." Mommy sat up straighter. "So what do we do?" Sarah looked at me. Not like I was a victim, like someone who mattered. "We can do a DNA test, quietly. I can help. There are places that do it for free, if it's for legal reasons." Mommy blinked. "You can do that?" Sarah nodded. "We'll need a sample from the baby once he's born, and from him, if we can get that." I felt my chest tighten. I hadn't thought about the baby like that, as a proof. I just wanted it to disappear. Now, it felt like maybe this tiny life inside me had a purpose. Maybe it wasn't just pain growing. Maybe it was a weapon. A soft one, but powerful. Sarah didn't promise us the world. She didn't say things would be easy. But that day, in that tiny clean room, with the smell of Dettol and rice still in the air, something cracked open. Not hope exactly, but something close. And for the first time in months, I looked a stranger in the eye and didn't look away.
The day Sarah said she had a plan, Mommy didn't even ask questions. She just nodded like her body was too tired to doubt anything anymore. It was a Sunday afternoon when it happened. The church had organized a free medical outreach, something they said was part of giving back to the community. I remember watching Pastor Paul shake hands, pose for pictures, and pray over cough syrup like it was holy water. I sat far back, under a tree, pretending I didn't know him, pretending he wasn't the reason my body no longer felt like mine. Sarah was there too, in her white uniform, calm, smiling. But her hands shook a little when she passed me a glance. Later, she told us how she did it, how she took a used tissue from the pulpit table, one Pastor Paul had wiped his sweat with, after shouting about sexual purity. She sealed it in a sterile bag like it was treasure. For me, she had already collected a prenatal swab weeks before, during a quiet visit when the clinic was closed. None of it felt real. It felt like a bad movie, one where the villain smiles and sings worship songs while your life burns behind his back. Then came the waiting. 1 week, 2, almost 4. Mommy stopped coming around as much. When Mommy asked, she'd just say, "Not yet, they haven't called." But her voice sounded thinner every time. Something wasn't right. Mommy paced every night, whispering to herself. I tried not to hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope was like standing on a ledge with your eyes closed, waiting for either wings or rocks. Then it rained. Heavy, loud rain, like the sky was trying to drown the earth. We were inside our shelter, a makeshift shack behind someone's poultry house. The roof leaked in 3 places. I had wrapped my arms around my belly to keep it warm when we heard the knock. 3 soft taps, not urgent, not loud. Mommy opened the door. It was Sarah. Her hair was soaked. Her shoes were muddy. She didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, holding an envelope in her hand like it weighed more than her body could carry. Then she looked at me.
Pastor Paul Obina, 99.99999% paternity match.
Someone had even highlighted it in red. People stood around, mouths open. Some were arguing, others were silent. But what I'll never forget was the sound of the church door busting open. It was during midweek service. Paul was preaching, wearing his long white robe, telling the congregation that God sees everything done in darkness. 2 policemen walked in. One stood at the back. The other walked straight down the aisle. And that was the first time I saw Paul look afraid. He froze mid-sentence, eyes darting between the crowd, the officer, and the paper someone had just brought in. They didn't even let him explain. He was handcuffed right at the altar, in front of his golden cross and his Holiness unto the Lord banner. People screamed, others clapped. Some ran out crying. The church split like a cracked egg. By evening, protesters had gathered outside, halfway chanting, holding signs, "Justice for Amara," and "Children deserve protection." The other half stood silently, faces tight, whispering, "This must be a setup, a lie. She's probably paid someone." One woman I barely recognized, a deaconess who once called me a stain on the church, came to me crying. "I'm sorry," she said, voice trembling. "I didn't know. I didn't want to believe." I nodded, but I couldn't speak. I wanted to scream, to ask her why it took printed proof before anyone believed a girl like me. Another woman walked past me that same evening. She didn't stop. She just hissed, "It's a pity how far people will go to destroy a man of God." I looked down, felt a child move inside me. For the first time, I didn't feel disgust. I felt protective, because now the world knew, even if they didn't all accept it, even if some still thought I was a liar. The truth was no longer mine alone. It had exploded, and it was burning everything in its path. I didn't know what trending meant until I saw my face, my old school ID photo, posted by strangers with the hashtag Justice for Amara. At first, it was just whispers in town. Then someone brought their phone to our shed and said, "You've gone viral," like I was supposed to clap. That same day, a Lagos news crew came. Cameras, lights, microphones. A man in a fancy suit asked me to speak from the heart. I didn't want to, but Mommy did. She sat straight, tied her wrapper tight, and told them everything. Her voice only broke when she said my age. That night, they aired it on television. I didn't watch. I just sat under the mango tree, rocking myself quietly, hearing the echoes of my name in voices I didn't recognize. By morning, it was everywhere. Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter. Strangers were arguing over me like I was a court case. Some said I was brave. Others said I was possessed. One post called me a Jezebel trying to bring down a man of God. Another said, "This is why victims stay silent." They weren't wrong. Even now, it felt like the louder the truth got, the harder it pressed on my chest. Then, Sarah got interviewed. I watched her from behind a cracked window at someone's house. She wore her nurse uniform, spoke calmly, but her hands shook. "They told me to stay out of it," she said, "but I couldn't. That girl could have been my daughter." That was the first time I cried in 2 days. Not because I was sad, but because someone finally said I deserved care. Then, Paul's wife, the one who used to greet us after service, went on radio and said something I'll never forget. Indeed, I knew. I suspected, but I was afraid. He said if I ever spoke, he would ruin me, and I believed him. The room went silent. I closed my eyes. Not in anger, just exhaustion. Because when the world starts watching, it doesn't always mean they understand. Some are just watching to pick sides. Others are finally seeing us, really seeing us. And that changes everything. I thought that was the end of it. Justice served, truth out, church divided, cameras gone. We were still under that mango tree, still ducking rain with leaking nylon, but something about the silence felt final. Like I could breathe again. Like maybe finally this chapter was over. But I was wrong. The letter came early, tucked inside a cracked brown envelope, no stamp. Someone must have dropped it by hand. There was no name on it, just my own. Amara. The handwriting was jagged, familiar, the kind you can't forget once it's pressed into your skin. Inside was a torn piece of lined notebook paper.
You think you know everything. Ask your mother about James. That was all. No threats, no signature. But I didn't need one. Paul. I could smell his cologne just from looking at the ink. My fingers went cold. I read it again. And again. The name James stared back like a cracked mirror. Ask your mother. My chest tightened. I turned slowly to where Mommy was squatting over the firewood, trying to blow life into wet coals. Her wrapper was slipping. Her hands were shaking a little, not from the cold, but something deeper, older. I called her name. Once. Twice. She looked up. And that's when I saw it. Fear. Not the fear of hunger or humiliation. No, this one was different. It was the kind of fear that knows a past is catching up. Who is James? I asked. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She blinked fast, her jaw clenched. Then she said too quickly, "Nobody, just a name. Maybe he made it up." But I knew that tone. It was the voice she used when I was 5 and asked why I didn't have a father. It was the voice she used when the neighbor asked about the scar on her thigh and she smiled too wide. It was the voice she used when she was lying. And this time, I saw it clear. That was the first time I ever saw my mother lie to me. And just like that, everything we thought we buried began to rise again. She thought the worst was behind her, but evil doesn't let go that easily. Subscribe, like, and hit the bell. Part 2 is where the real nightmare begins.